Muy buenos días, estimados señores y señoras. Antes de empezar, me gustaría dar las gracias al Erede de haberme invitado hoy en orden de poder compartir esa experiencia que es la Hafencity. Le voy a pedir un poco de comprensión también porque la presentación que va a seguir va a ser en inglés, en orden de poder expresarme un poco más precisamente, como hablo español pero no tan fluyente. En orden, bueno, ahora cambio. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, in order to tell you a bit about the Hafencity project, and my ambition today is twofold. On one hand, show you the vision of the project itself, and on the other hand, to give you an idea about we are institutionally organized. I will have to transport you at least mentally into another city, the city of Hamburg, that is situated in the northern of Germany. Hamburg has about 1.8 million inhabitants and approximately 5 million in the metropolitan area. It is situated in the north, as I said, and about 100 kilometers away from the Northern Sea. And although being so far away and connected by the river Elbe, the harbor, the port, and the whole industry around it has been very significant to the identity and, of course, the economy of Hamburg. When we talk of Hafencity, and unfortunately the image has changed, but you can understand, I think it's due to the format. But we're talking about this area that's in the orange area when we talk about Hafencity. It's an enlargement of the city center of Hamburg by 40%. We're talking about a former harbor-used area, a very industrial area that was not accessible to the public at the time because it was a zone that was only open to harbor-related industry. And the idea of Hafencity project emerged at the time when the harbor had his industrial changes, but also logistics changes due to the necessity of deep water, of restructurization. So this area was underused, and according to some developments you might have followed in the UK as the Docklands, Hafencity was a bit later. It was initiated in the year 1997 by the mayor of the time, Rau. And he developed this idea of this mixed-use area. We're talking of a very, very big area of about 157 hectares of size, from which 127 are of land. In the future, and we're talking about a project time of about 25 years, we will have 45,000 people working there and approximately 14,000 residents. At the moment, we already count about 11,000 people working there and 2,500 residents. When I talk of mixed use, I do not only talk of residential use and office use, of course. The other aspects as academic education, cultural use, for example, but I get into that a bit on the later slide, play a very big role also in the conception of this project. Here are some impressions just in order to show you what we understand by this mixed use. You will see on the one hand, on the left, is a picture of the Hafencity University for Architecture and Urban Planning that opened in the year 2013. But we do have other academic institutions such as private universities, for example, related on the one hand to the harbors, such as the Logistics University, but medical schools as well and economical schools as well. On the far right, you will see that one aspect of the whole development in terms of identity play very much into the aspect of maritime identity and the harbor that play a big role. Also in the whole landscape and design of the urban places. There are some examples here. One of the major intentions also in terms of planning and the design of the urban and public spaces is to create a quality of encountering and a quality of leisure as well, and that applies to touristic aspects as well. I will show you a few more pictures. On the second picture of the left, for example, is the big Elbphilharmonie. You might have heard of this. It is our big concert hall that will open in January next year. It has a very dominant architecture on the one hand, designed by Herzog and de Meuron, the Swiss architects, and is actually a glass construction on a listed building. It will host 3 concert halls, but hotel use as well, and there will be residential use also. I think that one aspect that will very, very important in terms of acceptance of this project, because we're talking of quite an invest for the city, is the public plaza on the, at about 40 meters height that will allow everybody to enter the building, not only if you have a ticket for the concert hall, and will give an overview above Hamburg at 360 degrees. Another aspect, and I won't get too much into it, but is, of course, the aspect of public transport. There's a picture of one of the 2 metro stations we have. We're building the 3rd one, and so the interconnectivity in terms of public transport plays a big role, but we have implied bicycle as well in Hamburg. The bicycle sharing works very well and is very well accepted, so of course this plays a big aspect as well. And all these pictures, as nice as they are, they were not as logical if you look at the area in the 1990s. So this is just to give you an impression that we're talking about an area that was industrially used, underused as well, and as I said, not accessible to the public because it was closed due to the trade situation. So it was separated by a district that is, so to say, the warehouse building, warehouse district. It's called the Speicherstadt, and it has been nominated Patrimonial Cultural Heritage by the UNESCO last year. There are some few more examples to show you about what transformation we're talking about. On the picture on the left down there, you will see it's one of the parks in Hafencity, and what is special about that the design has been realized in cooperation only with the inhabitants of Hafencity. We have a very strong community that is participating in all different kinds of aspects of the development. For example, the naming of streets. We always will have a resident that is part of the architectural competitions. But we also did a design workshop with the children of the primary school. So in order to give you an idea how we're institutionally organized, I'll just show you this chart without getting into all the details in short. But we as Hafencity Hamburg GmbH, we are a privately organized institution, but to 100% owned by the city of Hamburg. And we actually have 2 main roles. On the one hand, we act as if we were the owner of the land, and we created this special asset for port and city, where we, in the name of the city, sell the land. And with the income, we refinance the infrastructure. The infrastructure is to say the streets, the promenades, the bridges, for example. And the other role we have is a very important one as well, as the one as a management development company, because the whole planning, and I would emphasize especially the whole communication, is another important role that we play. So these are the 2 aspects that I'll get into more detail afterwards. The city-state of Hamburg, of course, plays a big role as well. I just maybe point out some aspects that Hafencity has been declared as a special development zone in the year 2005, which gives us an easier way to handle some development aspects, as for example, that the building permission is directly organized with the Ministry of Urban Planning. That is not typical in Hamburg because building permissions normally are given at a borough level. On the other hand, the third player, so to say, that plays a very important role in the whole development, of course, is the private sector, because the private sector is the one that pays for the innovation. I showed it, but I haven't mentioned it on the first slide. We're talking about an investment of about 10.2 billion euros about the whole time. And the major part, more than 8 billion, are private investments. This other chart maybe shows a bit more of the institutional framework. We have, at the one hand, the city of Hamburg at the top. At one hand, represented by our supervisory board, which is chaired actually by the mayor of the city, and 4 to 5 senators, one of which would be the senator for urban planning, for finance, and for culture, for example. And the other ministry that plays a very big role is the Ministry of Urban Development, that has its own target group named Hafencity Target Group, with whom we work very, very strongly together in order to organize the planning. The other hand, also on the more public level, our advisory boards. We have two kind of advisory boards. One is the advisory committee on a more general level. It is chaired by the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce, and other stakeholders that would be representatives, for example, from the university, the architecture, our master planner is in it, for example. And another coordination group we started in the year 2005 as well is the Coordination Group for Cultural Affairs that is co-chaired by the Ministry of Culture, but we do have representatives of the whole city of the culture area, which would be museum directors, for example, just to give you an idea. But the private sector plays a big role as well. We have on the one hand, call it competitive contracting with all the real estate developers. I might mention that now at the time we are able to tender the lots of land by competitions weighed by 70% for the concept and 30% the price, but I'll get into that afterwards. And of course, as a private organization and the ones that coordinate the whole infrastructure planning and construction, we have contracting with construction companies and all the planners with whom we work very strongly. So this is how we sell land. I would like to focus or point out some aspects because I think that they're very important in terms of our management. The first step, and I exemplify that by the last tender we had, is the one I'd call market mobilization, or in other words, communication. We have quite strong regulations and ambitions in terms of social inclusion, in terms of ecologic sustainability and mobility concept. And in order to do so, we have to address a very varied group of people, because it's not only that the developers that have to understand our idea, it's also the future users. So in order to exemplify that, we had a tender last year with for a new area in Hafencity. It's an area that will have a strong residential use. It's 2,000 apartments we're talking about, the ambition to integrate very much green promenades, for example, and another aspect is the aspect of social inclusion. So what we did is to address, on the one hand, social institutions first. Social institutions, for example, being foundations or organizations that ambition to organize special residential concepts, for example, residential concepts for people with disabilities, or residential concepts addressing especially families or elderly people. So the way we have to communicate into this direction is, of course, another one that for the developers. And we have a very strong history of joint building ventures. I don't know if this is it is very special to Germany. I don't know if you have this in Chile, but it means that private people can go together and realize their idea of residential use. It would be, for example, a group of 15 people that say we want to develop a residential concept that includes special facilities for families, for example. So in order to do so, we need very, very strong and specific communication. The next step would be the tendering process, is when we put the tender out on the market. And at the moment, we weigh the concept to 70% and the price to 30%. The intention, I guess, is obvious. It is to really point out that the concepts are or apply to our restrictions. So we have quite a lot of minimal restrictions at the moment. I just point them out quickly. It is, for example, the ambition that they have to a minimum to go with us concerning the mobility concept. The mobility concept at the moment is an ambition to reduce the parking within the buildings to a 0.4 per apartment. It is the ambition to include electromobility. It is the ambition to include a car sharing concept within the quarter. So it's quite a bit. It is also the ambition to apply to ecological standards. We have developed a seal, for example, the Hafencity seal. It's a minimum standard of ecological buildings that the developers have to apply to. After that, when we want to know who will be the developer of a building, and just to give you an idea, we had in the last tender we had 6 lots and we had more than 50 applications, so it's quite a run. We will grant an exclusive option, so we don't sell immediately. An exclusive option means that the developer will have the possibility in a period of about approximately 18 months to 24 months, this is the experience we had, to make the architectural competition. But moreover, this gives us the possibility and the time to really fix the aspects of innovation. For example, I have an investor that said, oh, I have a very good, nice concept. We want to allow startups in a whole, on a whole floor to come, and we'll give him a minimum rent or a maximum rent of 10 euros. So this might be the aspect that gave him the right, or gave him, or made him the winner of the competition, so to say. But at the same time, we will have to guarantee that this works. So this whole period will be a time of negotiation, that we ensure that the aspects of innovation are really strongly managed and are, for example, also guaranteed for a minimum of time, for 15 years, for example, in that case. In our last tender, for example, we also negotiated that some of the buildings that are very crucial to the development, because they have shops of daily supply, that the developer keeps these buildings in his own ownership for 30 years. And it's only after once the building permission is given that we actually sell the land. And this is an advantage for the investor as well, because he doesn't have to finance this whole period of time. He will have the ability to adapt his planning and to set and actually pay for it once he starts to build. Another aspect I would like to point out, and is one of our urbanistic ambitions, is the mix of uses. So you will see a cut here through the second floor. You'll see formerly or mostly red or blue buildings. The red means it's a residential use, so you'll see some concentrations on some part, and blue would be the commercial or office use. There's some other colors, maybe I point out the green ones, which are educational institutions. As I mentioned, we have one big university, Hafencity University, with 2,000 students, but other institutions as well, such as a primary school that exists since the year 2009, and some more that are projected. What I would like to point out is when we look at the ground floor, and this is this plan here, you will see a lot of yellow. The yellow means uses open to the public. So this wouldn't mean that you will have shops and retail everywhere. This, of course, not. But our ambition is to create a ground floor that is open to the public in order to make it a lively place. I'll show you an example to just show you what we mean by that. This building, for example, is a really strongly mixed building. There are the headquarters of Greenpeace that moved into this building 2 years ago. It's the part where you'll see the windmills. You will have office use also and residential use, and on the promenade level there are different exhibition spaces. So what does it mean for Greenpeace? Greenpeace has their office on top of there, but at the same time they will have an exhibition space open to the public. And I actually just happened to be there 2 weeks ago with a group of students, and as I asked Greenpeace, maybe a provocative question, but I asked them, how was it to move to Hafencity? And they said very openly, well, it was quite a conflict internally, because we were living, or we were using an old building, so to say, in their terms, a credible building, a building with credibility. And of course, to move into a new built area with in such a modern building had quite some controversial aspects in their internal communication. But as a result, they said, we pay exactly the same rent for more space, because we actually managed to reduce our external costs. We're talking about a zero energy building here. They have the windmills and a whole solar plant on the roof of this building. And we have the aspect of visibility. We have the aspect of visibility because we have our exhibition on the ground floor. They regularly have schools visiting their exhibition space, but we have the visibility of ecological sustainability at the same time. So I think this is quite a nice and impressive story. What I'd like to point out as well on this picture, what you can see very well, is the quality of the urban spaces. On one hand, designed to be open, to be used by the people working around there. And at the same time, you might notice that they're very close to the water. We're talking about a level of 4 meters 50. So this is not flood secured. We have a tidal difference in Hamburg of about 3 meters 20, and a high tide at about once a year or every few years, so not every, that would be at 6 meters 20. So what we did in order to have a closeness to the water and to integrate this maritime heritage is to say we will try to manage to make the whole infrastructure, the whole public spaces floodable. So that in the 364 days a year, when we don't have the high rise, we will have a possibility to have a closeness to the water. And we constructed the buildings so that they have a flood securing system within the buildings. The rest of the infrastructure, so the official streets and the bridges themselves, they would be at a height of 8 meters 20. So we will always have this height difference with stairs, but it will be integrated into the urban design in order to have a closeness to the water, because otherwise, if we had heightened everything at 8 meters 20, the water would have been very, very far away. Another aspect in terms of social mix I'd like to point out here is the central part of Hafencity. You might see that there's a lot of red brick. This is not everywhere in Hafencity. Oh, I'm sorry, my time is going up, so I'll have to hurry up. So what I'd like to point out here is that we have a very, very strong mix of uses, such as a musician's house, for example, including 19 apartments without sound, so the musicians can do music without disturbing people. I would like to point out, sorry, before finishing though, this building here in the same street, where the mix is as strong as having on the one hand a 3-star restaurant, 2 kindergartens, but different residential uses as well, such as a cooperative housing or a living community shared by students and people with disabilities. So I'll go through the other slides. This is actually the area I was talking about, the residential area, where we try to impose much more green. You will see that we have a green promenade that will be accessible only by foot, not by car. There's the only artificial island in Hafencity at a size from 1.6 hectares. And the whole different colors, you might not differentiate here, indicate the whole different kind of residential uses we have there. So quite some building joint ventures, foundations that cooperate with residential uses, such as housing for elderly people, for example. And what we try to do is to set the frame for our ambition. Our ambition here is the case to integrate families, especially. So we were going to build a school. We're building the whole infrastructure in order to make this possible. So let me summarize with one last slide. I hope this is okay.
Terminemos con las conclusiones.
Okay. Sí. I'd like to point out what are the keys to the success of this project. So we have a pretty long time perspective. We're talking about 25 years of project. And this goes together with the aspect of flexibility. The flexibility on one hand at the master plan in order to adapt to social but also political condition and changes. In our case, it was, for example, the fact that we had to rework the master plan after 10 years. We redesigned it in the year 2010 due to, on the one hand, experiences we had. There is, for example, the politic ambition to integrate social housing to 1/3, which was not in the beginning of Hafencity. And it was, in another case, the realization that a whole neighborhood that was a warehouse district that was used by creative people, and we were actually planning to redevelop, we integrated this in our ambition. So what we did is not to say, oh, go away. No, we have a need to integrate the subcultural uses as well. So I think this is one of the key elements of the success of the project. The other aspect, I pointed them out before, is the differentiation of uses, a mixed use in comparison to other projects we had in Hamburg as well. So for example, in 1970s or 80s, where we created only business districts that at latest 7 o'clock are empty, where there's no life. The ambition from the beginning was to make a quarter where you can live and work at the same time. And I'd like to point out as well the consideration of spaces accessible to the public spaces, their quality in terms of creating places you want to be, places you want to live, and places where people can encounter and have a good time, I hope. So, thank you very much. I'm finished.
Gracias. Gracias, Christina Ruppert.